How many people do we know out there who struggle to know what are all the benefits for our currently serving active duty when it comes to our veteran care or when it comes to that time when we transition? Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 151st episode of Stories of Service, Ordinary People Who Do Extraordinary Work. I'm the host of Stories of Service, Teresa Carpenter. And today, as I always say, we have another amazing guest. Sometimes I'm humbled by the caliber of people that agree to come on the show. And today I have Dr. Paul Lawrence. Mr. Lawrence, how are you doing today?
Hey, great to be with you, Teresa. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's an honor to come on today. We'll be talking about a lot of different opportunities and entitlements. And I hate even using the words entitlements. I love the fact that you actually use the word in here, benefits. A lot of benefits that are available to people who agree to serve their country. And I felt no better person to explain this than you, sir, a former Undersecretary for Benefits at the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. And today we're going to talk about the overlooked, misunderstood, and underutilized service benefits that confuse people, prevent them from accessing support services, and how we're going to get smarter about those processes. We're going to go a little further than the TAPS class. We're going to discuss how the VA works because we've all had the TAPS class. In fact, that's really what got me on this road to understanding that this was something I needed to start taking seriously now, not at the end of when my service is up, but right now, 3 years out is when we need to be thinking about this. And as the former Undersecretary for Benefits at the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, you oversaw veterans benefits programs impacting nearly 3.9 million veterans and talked personally with thousands of veterans attending virtual town halls during the COVID-19 pandemic. And to help veterans better access the benefits they are entitled to after leaving the VA, you wrote the book Veterans Benefits for You, Get What You Deserve, which was published in 2023. And it's a common sense guide that helps veterans and their families access a wide range of benefits. Dr. Lawrence has 30 years of experience working closely with government leaders and was twice selected by the Federal Computer Week as one of the top 100 public service business leaders. You were a public sector vice president with Kaiser Associates and a partner at Ernst & Young, a vice president with Accenture, an executive director with the MITRE Corporation, and vice president with IBM Business Consulting Services, and a partner with Price Waterhouse's Coopers. You earned your Master's of Arts and PhD in Economics from Virginia Tech, earned your Bachelor's of Arts in Economics from the University of Massachusetts Amherst, graduating Pi Beta Kappa, and served in the U.S. Army prior to this, attending the rank of captain, and graduated from the Army Airborne School and was awarded the Meritorious Service Medal. Welcome again.
Hey, thank you.
So first off, what inspired you after your career in the U.S. Armed Forces to you took a diversion here. You went into corporate America and then you went back into serving with the military or serving our military veterans. What inspired that transition?
Well, so I grew up in a military family, and I served in the Army through my ROTC commitment. So I was always very passionate about veterans issues and causes. But most of my consulting career, the ones you listed there, was consulting to the federal government. The big surprise to viewers and listeners, there's a lot of problems and they need a lot of help. So I had spent a lot of time doing that. And when the time came to apply to join the Trump administration, you really have this moment of, well, I can sit back and complain about people who really are not serving veterans, or you can finally go and do something. So ironically, my son, who's an optometrist, had just started a residency at the VA. They train a lot of doctors. So he was actually in the system. So I said, well, I couldn't have convinced him to go because it would be great to go to the VA and not pursue this opportunity. So I really wanted to make a difference because I just really felt things should and could be different for veterans than kind of constantly mentioning the VA and having this eye roll moment and thinking it just shouldn't be that way. Certainly someone can go and try to make it better.
What were when you first took that job, what were some of the initial problems that you saw that were just the glaring issues that you thought, okay, I'm going to try to do something to tackle this issue?
Well, there were a lot there. It wasn't like the place was in crisis. They had come through a really difficult period and they were kind of treading water. So it was a sort of sense of, we're doing okay. And so I really wanted folks to understand, but okay really wasn't good enough. It could be better. President Trump signed a series of laws in 2017, extending the GI Bill, making it forever instead of 15 years. Signed another law that modernized appeals process. So those laws had to be implemented and they were struggling. There was
Mhm.
also a sense of, they did a lot of things, but I wasn't really clear that they were focused on what mattered to veterans. So every time I'd be in meetings and they would talk about the wonderful things they'd accomplish, I'd say, but yeah, but what do veterans want? And inevitably you'd see, oh, they want their benefits and they want them fast. And so I really
Mhm.
wanted to get people talking about that versus a host of other things. What's really the mission and what should we do? So I really try to spend a lot of time saying, if this isn't helping veterans, let's not spend time with that. And I'll give you an example. They had a contract with NASCAR. Wouldn't it be great to go to a NASCAR event and put up signs that, hey, we're here to help veterans? Except nobody really went to NASCAR events except for the leaders who like to go to NASCAR events and hang out with people because they were sponsors. So I was like, let's save that money and put it towards doing veterans issues. So there are a whole series of things like that. But the real mission was to get veterans their benefits incredibly fast.
Right, right. And I will tell you, one of the things that I really appreciated was the fact that when I got to this command, even though I thought I might retire, less than 2 years out, I was able to go to TAPS class, and it was like it blew my mind, all the different things that you've got to think about and do before you even get out, especially when it comes to medical. I think I didn't really understand the fact that if I spent my entire career avoiding medical because I was either too busy or I didn't want something to appear on my record, something now had to change where this is the rest of my life we're talking about. And if I have unaddressed issues, which I did, I need to come up with a plan to figure out how to do that now. And I would say we're going to talk about this, some of the things that people overlook. And I would say that's probably one of those things.
Absolutely. Your medical record and your service records, these are going to be invaluable when you deal with the VA once you become a veteran, after you leave service. So one of the best pieces of advice is, yes, get a copy of it. Get it complete. If you need things and you didn't get them documented, document and go find out what happened and get it all on the record. So later when folks start to deal with stuff, because sadly, as you'll find out when you get older, things only get worse. So if it's kind of bothering you now, in 10 years, it's most likely really going to bother you. And when you come back and say, I should be covered by benefits, the record is going to be really important.
Right. And even out here in London, a lot of the physicians, because I'm on private care, they'll send their specialty letters to me directly. And it's all on you while you're overseas to put everything yourself into your record. So I've had to use DoD Safe over to Lakenheath, and there's one person in the records office that
Mhm.
I've been communicating over the last 2 years. And then anything that I send him, I'm also saving in a folder and having that on hand, so that when I do my claim, I can backdate everything with a spreadsheet of when I saw a provider, what was the disposition, those kinds of things. And I think if I hadn't gone to TAPS class and I hadn't been exposed to some of this stuff, I don't think I would have known that that was something I had to do.
Yeah, no, what you described is a real best practice. And I know you're good at clipping stuff and sharing it with your viewers and followers. Clip that little segment where you describe what you did. That's really it. You've got to kind of do this yourself, or else later you're just going to encounter headwinds, quite frankly.
Right. Well, I had a person from TAPS class who took a spreadsheet of every time they got seen, what was the disposition, what were the prescriptions that they were given, and he took all the personal information out of it, but he gave me the spreadsheet, and I got that right as I came here, so I knew what were some of the things that I was going to have to do to ensure that things were in my record. And even now, we've gone from, I think I started with Alta, and then we are now on this Genesis system. And
Mhm.
even if you go on it, you can't even see if the stuff that I've been sending for the last 2 years is on there. So unless I do a records check, I do a whole pull of my record, which I did when I first got here. So at this point, it's just a matter of I got to just do another records pull. So I think this is something that you just have to constantly be aware of. But other than the medical issue, what would you say are some of the other things that people, while they're still serving, they should be conscientious of before they get out so that they're best positioned to take advantage of their benefits?
Sure. Well, basically, if you do apply for benefits, let's talk about disability compensation. Hey, I got hurt during service or injured. You're going to have to do three things. You're going to have to demonstrate that you, in fact, did have an occurrence or an incident, right? So your medical record is really going to matter in terms of, hey, I got hurt. I went to see the doctor at this period of time. You're also going to have to demonstrate that you were in the service. So you're going to say, yes, my DD 214, my service record shows I was in the service. And then later, you're going to have to show that it still continues to bother you. And that's a function of what happened to you in the service. So again, your medical record demonstrating that you were in the service as well as it continues to bother you. Having that information is really key.
Right, right. And I just put you on full screen to kind of explain some of these things because, as you said, I do clip sections of this podcast afterwards, and I've found that it to be very helpful. Some of these bite-sized pieces that we can put out to people. And I see that you have that lovely whiteboard in the background, and I know you've been doing some shows as well where you explain and you break some things down with that board. Tell me a little bit about that show and how you've been able to explain to some of the people some of the resources that are out there.
Yeah, so I started using my LinkedIn presence when I was in office. I just realized people wanted information. And so when the pandemic happened, I ended up explaining a lot. So since I've left office, I realized there's still veterans need a lot of information about benefits. And it's not that people are lying or whatever, they just were misinformed. And I learned a lot from, administering them all. So I began to just break things down and have these little whiteboard sessions that I put up on LinkedIn where I try to explain things so people can understand some of their benefits, some of the questions I get asked, as well as some of the nuances that are not obvious. So folks can see that on my LinkedIn account. But yeah, that's what I try to do. I call them whiteboard sessions where I try to explain and put information up so people can, if they can't listen, they can at least see it and maybe clip it and deal with it.
Yep. And the book is really helpful because it breaks it down. It's got a total of 13 chapters. And as you go through it, it covers everything from the GI Bill to the home loan to veterans readiness and employment. And let's transition a little bit to the GI Bill. Um, are people still able to use the Montgomery GI Bill and the post 9/11 GI Bill? I've heard lately that people are being told they can't use both, or that some people qualify for both. Can you
Yeah,
explain a
well,
little bit about
this
that?
is this is a little complicated because there just was a Supreme Court decision where they said no, you should be
Mhm.
able to use both, and they told VA to go back and figure it out. And VA hasn't figured it out yet, so it's a little
Okay.
bit in flight. So I appreciate people kind of doing that. However, just remember that this is a powerful benefit. So however you use it, one of the most important things is plan to use it right because it isn't forever. It is for a finite amount of education, and you can run out of that if you're not careful.
Right, right. I mean, there are so many amazing ways that you can even use the GI Bill. You can transfer it to your family members. You can transfer it to your even your spouse or your children, or you can use it for yourself. And I really appreciated what you had put up for just for thinking and for inspiration. And I know it's not policy yet, but I think a lot of us would love to see one day the GI Bill be expanded for entrepreneurship or a fellowship, or just like you know how there's some lawyers that instead of going to law school they study under a mentor, and they do that process, and then when it's time to take the bar they take the bar. I would love something like that for creators. I mean, content creators now are such a developing and fast growing field. How nice would it be there to be some sort of a content creator fellowship where people like myself who do this as a passion project could really sharpen our skills and professionalize it in something that's a little bit more specialized. So I really hope to see one day other creative ways for us to use that GI Bill.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because a couple things. One is you're right. The original GI Bill, 1944, like 10% of the country had gone to college. So offering folks coming back from World War II the chance to go to college for their service was really a big deal. But over time, things have changed. Industries have come and gone. As you point out, there's all new ones around digital information and
Mhm.
technology and the like. So it should be used differently. But here's where you can really make a difference because a lot of the things I talk about what could happen, that would require legislation. So that's seen as like this hard thing to do. But the good news is almost every congressperson, especially the veterans, when you ask them, and this happened when we were in office, there was an election, new Congress people came in and they went around the room and said, hey, what do you want to do when you're a Congress? All of them said on their little form they filled out, we want to improve the GI Bill. So they are open to these ideas. So it's not unreasonable for you, your listeners, whatever, to petition your congresspeople and say there should be avenues for folks who either went to college and don't want anymore or don't want to go to college, like opening a business, like doing mentorships and apprenticeships like you're describing, like other things. And so
Mhm.
I'd encourage people to share those ideas with their elected representatives because that's how it happens.
It is, and I have had on people who have been successful in getting things through Congress. And and you do not have to be part of a major organization, but yes, you do have to. I have two people in particular, one who got the suicide by job codes study commissioned in the NDAA, and then another, a woman, a military spouse actually, and Marine Corps reservist who was able to pass the pet reimbursement bill. And
Right.
they were both grassroots efforts of
Mhm.
people who went and saw the right congressperson and found the right person to basically carry that bill and to carry that initiative forward. So it can happen. And I agree. I think that that's going to be something that as time goes by, we're just going to modernize the GI Bill. And as you said, there really are people now, I believe, that are looking for other options besides college. And so I think that that is only going to change in time. And Ridge Edwards is on the call. I always like to bring in people who are on the call. It's the great part about having the live show. And he said, I did the same when we were talking about not necessarily paying attention to medical. Don't bury medical. I had things happen fast and furious to med retire at 16 years, didn't have the time to fix it before leaving, and you'll never know when you'll be done. So true, so true. Um, Tell us a little bit about some of the other issues that you saw that just kept coming up time and time again during your time serving, and then also during the time that you're at now, where you're writing the book and you're doing some of these sessions and things like that.
Sure. Well, one of the big issues is a couple things, right? So veterans often say, I really didn't get hurt during service, or others have it worse than me. I don't really want to apply for benefits. And that's like inaccurate thinking about how the government budgets for benefits. When the government puts aside money for veterans benefits, it's called mandatory spend. It's like they have to make the money available, like with Social Security. So if you get benefits, it doesn't come from my benefits or your friend's benefits. So there's always money available. It's kind of scary as a taxpayer, but it's a great commitment to veterans. So don't think that way. The other thing is what you and I talked about, which is, it might not be bad now, but it will get worse over time. So these little things, especially hearing for people who've been around loud noises, especially your back, if you sat for a long period of time, you were a pilot or the like, it will get worse over time. So don't think about so much your benefits as you are now, but think about it as you will be when you're older. And finally, tell your family about benefits. This is going to be really important because if something happens to you because of your service, there may be benefits available to your family, wife, kids, and maybe even your parents under certain circumstances. Okay. It's really saddening when someone passes, so everyone's upset about that. And then the family finds out, oh, now I've got to go deal with VA. I didn't know
Mhm.
anything about this. I didn't understand it. So a best practice is tell your family well in advance of anything about your benefits. These can change your life tremendously because it just makes it easier for everybody.
Oh, hold on just a second. Absolutely. It is one of those things where I think that you have to just think ahead and you have to plan for it. And if you plan for it, you're in such a better position. Tell me a little bit about VA. One thing I've always been curious about are the VA retirement homes, because I think that a lot of us, as we get older, we might not be in a position where our family can take care of us. And we may end up having to go someplace and have long term care. Are those easy for people to access? And have you heard that people have been able to use those to get assisted living care and other resources?
So yes, but let me explain a little bit. VA doesn't run retirement homes. The states run retirement homes and long-term care, things like you're describing. VA provides some high-level oversight and guidelines. So this is much more of a state benefit. So the answer to your question is, how good are they? Again, it depends upon the state. Okay. Many states have them, but they often don't have enough space. So that's something to begin to think about. Like you just pointed out, to begin to plan in advance. Think about, hey, I want to retire in a certain place. You might want to do some thinking now about what are the resources available. And that kind of ties to another point. While we're talking about the benefits available from the national VA, don't forget that each state has a State Department of Veterans Affairs, and they offer benefits as well that complement and often are somewhat better than the national VA. So when you think about where you want to retire as a veteran, look at the state benefits. So for example, many states, don't tax veterans on their retirement pay. Many states, at a certain level of disability, exempt you from property taxes, which is a big way they raise taxes at a state level. They have education benefits, and some of them have very generous benefits for spouses. So kind of look at all that at a state level when when you think about where you're going to end up after military service.
And then I also want to address the mental health and the emotional side of transitioning, because I think that while we have all these benefits, I think I saw in your newsletter, and I definitely want to read that book, Bowling Alone. Scott Mann talks about it too in his podcast, and I want to know, from your perspective, have you seen there to be some best practices for veterans when they lose that mission, and that sense of purpose? Because I can tell you, I just left NATO, and it's like we were talking earlier, it's a very busy and challenging job, and I was always on call, always getting emails, and I'm glad to be turned over. But then there's that part of me that's a little lonely, and it's like, oh gosh, no one's asking me any, no one's emailing
Yeah.
me all hours of the night, no one needs anything. And so how do we find that next mission?
Well, it's very important. I'd couple a couple of things. One was your point earlier about planning early, okay? And that is thinking through what will happen when I eventually leave the military forever. You'll go to a different assignment in a short period of time. You'll be back in the game, and it'll be the same
Yeah.
kind of thing, okay? But you need to think about that as you leave your last assignment, which is one of the most effective ways you get connectivity, meaning, and purpose is with a job. I'm very passionate about veterans should be employed. Being an unemployed veteran or a veteran, that is generally not a good thing, right? Or stated more differently, you have meaning and purpose, income for a life to keep yourself going. I think a job is a really good thing. Yeah, there's some bad jobs. We've all had them and whatever, but from a bad job, you can get a better job. From a good
You
job, you
can.
can get a better job. But I think
Yes, you can.
employment is really key. And we ought to be telling folks when they leave, the goal of you leaving is to have a job on day one as a veteran. Good things will happen from there. So I'm definitely a big believer in that. But again, it's so much of life. The people who are good in service most likely are going to be good in transition because those skills will translate. But that's something we have to talk about a lot, which is you lose your tribe. You've been part of this awesome team. I would argue the very best team in the world, the U.S. military, like the most effective team in the world, where so much is thought through and planned. You're going to go into civilian life, and it is just different. It's not better or worse. It's just different. So you should figure out what are those things that are going to connect you, right? In your community, what are you going to do? In your faith base, if that's your thing, what are you going to do? So if you don't think about that, you're going to wake up in a very difficult situation. And that's when I think we now begin to worry about, bad stuff happening, right? I'm disconnected. I don't have anything. I'm not doing anything. And boy,
Mhm.
the recipe for trouble is just kind of right there. So yeah, I think you're thinking about the good things now in advance.
Absolutely. We're moving to Gulfport, Mississippi. I've never lived down in the South, and we're intending to buy a home. We're going to hopefully turn it into a short-term rental. We don't know how long we're going to stay there. If we love it, we might stay there for quite a while. If we don't, we'll think about another place to settle down. But I do think through all those things and about how important community is, because without community, you can have I always think like you can have the best job in the world. You can be in the best possible shape. You can be doing all the other things right. But if you don't have that loving support network and those people around you, then that's just a huge piece that you have to get right. So I think it's really important that people try to find that. So and to that point, there are so many different organizations on the veteran side where you can still continue to give back
Right.
through these charitable causes and through organizations within your community that help service members and help veterans.
Right.
Have you found that for yourself as well as you've moved forward?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I would tell you one of the best ways you can connect is volunteering. All organizations need volunteers. Yeah, they love your money, but they're realistic about that. They'd much rather have volunteers, especially the veteran organizations or the veteran focused organizations. So yeah, I got out. The people called me, hey, you want to be on some boards? You want to help us, right? I was like, yeah, to the extent I can. But I absolutely think about connecting with the military community is so important, right? And all
Mhm.
you have to do is volunteer. You don't have to do anything but show up. They'll let you help, and you'll be surprised at the community. But I think the thing you were pointing out, Teresa, which is really important, when you join the military, the community kind of happens to you, right? You're now part of this team, and
And
you're
you're not
just
having to do
part
any
of this
work for it.
big
Yeah.
thing. You don't have Once you become a civilian, you got to go find that community, and that's where I think people don't think that one through very carefully. So yeah, yes to everything you just said.
And I think that, and of course we're using it tonight, but I also think, and I'm really interested in reading Bowling Alone, because the premise of how it's been described, I think really eloquently captures where we stand today, where in a world where we are so heavily connected to people, like I'm talking to you from London, England, we are so much more not connected in our communities. I really do believe. I remember my dad was in a bowling league growing up, and there were always face to face get-togethers. And I think what the computers and the cell phones and the texting and all those things has done is it's made us a little bit lazier when it comes to, I think, the face to face. But the face to face is what is so rewarding when you get that chance to. We've had dinner with our neighbors the last few nights we've been here, and we keep just kicking ourselves. We're like, why didn't we ever do this? This whole
Yeah.
2 years we were here. Why did it take when we were about to leave for us all to get together and have dinner together? So I think that community piece is so important.
Yeah, but I also think that veterans should think about that and say, what did you learn in the military? The importance of leadership skills, about taking the first step, getting people to work together. The veteran in the community can start that. They can invite everyone over for dinner. They don't have to worry, oh, nothing's going
Mhm.
on here, right? They can be the people that greet everybody walking dogs in their neighborhood. It's just
Yeah.
some things like that. But I absolutely think we should, make that more of a point of emphasis with transition. What tribe are you going to be part of? What are you going to do when you're finally, a veteran now? How are you going to connect?
Right. Absolutely. So, in terms of connection, I definitely want to keep plugging this book here. It is so helpful, and like I said, it's just so plain speak. And I love all the. I mean, you can look through here. It's got all like bullet points, bold face type. It's just simple. It's very simple, and it's one of those things where I might not need to know this information right now, but I can go to this later, and then I can look at this, and then I can kind of Google some things online. What inspired you after you left your position to say, okay, I'm going to write a book that captures some of the things that I've seen? What inspired you to do that?
Well, it was two things. Thing one was in 2020 during the pandemic, I held all these town halls because I used to travel, not a lot, but periodically every couple of months, go to different places and go to like an American Legion post or a VFW and have a town hall with veterans. And I really liked that interaction to hear what was on their mind and the like. Well, the pandemic, you couldn't travel. So I started doing them over the phone, right? So you sort of
Mhm.
lock off a state and say, I'm going to do a town hall in the state of Georgia, for example, right? Through the miracle of technology, you could call out, people could call in and the like. You could have like 50,000 veterans on the phone at any one time. Because remember, during the pandemic, people weren't going anywhere. So about four,
No.
4 or 5 o'clock, it was pretty easy. And then I realized, well, they didn't just want to hear people talk. They wanted to ask questions and you had to answer the questions. You couldn't do a lot of case management because you had a private information. So they'd be passed off to somebody who could look at their record and the like. But I heard the same questions. They did like 110 of these, about an hour long. Every hour I'd answer probably 15, 20 questions. So you could see I do the math real quick, 1,500, 1,600 questions. I started to hear the same thing over and over again. How do I do this? How do I get this done? Please explain to me what's that. So when I got out, I said, gee, certainly there must be a book, right? When the administration changed, there must be a book somewhere. And I looked and there really wasn't. The books that were out there were written by lawyers and we love them to death, but nobody can understand when they write. Okay. And all the books were like one benefit. So if you wanted to get all the benefits, you had to buy numerous books. So I said, okay,
Mhm.
I'm going to write a book with all the benefits in one place, kind of like you pointed out, and I'm going to make them easy to understand because I had to explain them to people. People had to explain them
Mm.
to me, right? I had to be able to figure out these are the key things, and then plus having been on the other side, here's a few mistakes that you can avoid. Here's a few things you got to do to kind of get your benefit, you get your claims, your applications through the process as fast as
Mhm.
you can.
No, I love it. And I mean, like I say, even in the chapter section, it's just so easy. Like, just an example. I mean, you've got chapter 7, veterans pension, survivors pension, important resources. I mean, it's so simple. And anybody can just flip through this book. They can if they've got a certain question about a certain case. And then what I also like is that you even have some of these little charts in here. So here on page, I think it's page 78 here, you can see there's a chart of certain things that people want to break down. So if you are a veteran, and you will need this. If you are an active duty member, you will need this. for certain particular. This is for the home loans. So and I thought that was really interesting too, having just bought a home. So
Yeah.
I really appreciate the fact that you took the time to put this together. When you released the book, what was the reception like for the book, and how has that been going for you?
It was exactly what you said. People were happy there was a book in one place. Okay, it did
Hmm.
very well on Amazon when it was getting a lot of attention. It was like actually one of the highest rated books total on Amazon for a month or so. So yeah, the publisher was very, very happy with that. But it got just again, like the best compliment was, gee, it's easy to read, which was sort of my point, right? And they're all right there. In fact, the bigger compliment was I got a lot of folks buying it and giving it to older veterans in their life, the uncle, a father, a grandfather, or the older neighbor in their life who they just said they never really connected as a veteran. They didn't know what was available to them. So that really made me feel good when I thought about how that could change people's trajectory and sort of invite them to reconnect with being veterans. So it's been very well received. Still highly rated on Amazon. And yeah, I mean, a lot of this information doesn't change.
Right, right. And I think that people just sometimes just need to be pointed in the right direction. And it makes me sad to think that there are people who are struggling, and then they're in their 70s or their 80s or even their 90s, and they could have had access to care. They could have had access
Right.
to services that would alleviate some of their pain or alleviate something for them, but they just didn't know where to find it. And especially in places that aren't military towns.
Right.
So I come from Columbus, Ohio, and a lot of people from Columbus, Ohio are not talking about the military, where, someplace like Norfolk, Virginia, they might be a little more familiar with what's available to them. So I think a book like this really helps to bridge that gap in some of those underserved areas that don't really have a big military presence.
Right. And something you said when we began is really important, right? These are not entitlements. These are benefits that veterans have earned by their honorable service. So these are benefits anybody could have. You just had to join the military and serve honorably. So these aren't entitlements. So when you're drawing on them, you're not asking for things. You're getting what you've earned. And I think that language is very, very important. So, oh, I don't want anything. Well, you've earned them. This was the deal, right? Enlist, join the military. Nobody gets drafted anymore, right? 50 years, all that's gone.
Mhm.
So hopefully competitive wages, interesting assignments. And when you get done, there's another special thing for you. Most
Mhm.
of it's administered by the VA. And here they are. It's kind of the deal, right? And so you're
Right.
really just completing the promise.
Yeah, and completing that circle, and you're educating other people by you doing it. You're showing other people that it's okay for them to do it too. So
Right.
I think that you're setting that example, which I think is really important. And Jay Taylor, he's on the call as well, and he says here, see if I can pull to it, but I can just read it off here too. But he says you usually get a briefing when you are ETSing, but can a command sergeant major or commander network with someone who can come to the unit battalion level and have a discussion and answer question? And that is a great question. That is a great question, Jay. I have myself personally reached out to the people that run the TAPS class, and they will come to your unit and give discussions about some of this. So I would highly encourage you to get in touch with whoever at your base is running the transition assistance program. They can come and have a discussion and answer some of these questions. But that's a great question. For active duty, beyond the TAPS class, are there other resources that they can access to have some of these discussions?
Sure. Let's go through a couple different ways to answer this question. One is any service member can get help with their benefits, any service member, any veterans, by approaching a veteran service officer. These are folks who've been trained on VA benefits and processes, and they've done a little background checking if they're accredited. You can get those from the VSOs, American Legion, DAV, VFW. They have people there that'll help you with your benefits. So you can just join, call them up and ask, right? If I was asking for somebody for a group, I might ask them to send a service officer, but you could also even call somebody from VA, right? And say, hey, we want somebody who administers benefits to come and talk to us about benefits. They will do that. It's not easy to arrange, but they will do that, right? So I would be looking for people who understand the process. And finally, your state has service officers
About
too.
the state level too. Yep.
The state, and sometimes even based on things, I think this is Ohio in your example, they have county service officers. So you could find somebody and they would love to come and talk about these things because they live for this moment of being able to explain these very complicated process. So I would definitely be reaching out to somebody, reaching out to these different organizations and asking somebody to come and talk about what they are. And if they don't have anybody, heck, contact me and we'll arrange a Zoom call. And I'm happy to do this. I've done this for some companies that have lots of veterans as an effort to sort of make them realize the value of having a company veteran group. But I'd be happy to do it under certain circumstances if they can't find anybody else.
That is a great idea about company veteran groups. I bet you a lot of employers could, especially ones like Amazon and the ones that are the larger ones that do employ a lot of veterans. If they've got some sort of a resource available, I think that that's really helpful for people to tap into to learn more about some of these benefits, because it really does frustrate me that when I really think about it, that there are these, like you said, these benefits, not entitlements, but benefits that people just don't understand or don't know enough about, or there just isn't that education out there. And so it does surprise me that you wrote the book because there wasn't a book. You would think at some point that the VA would put out a book like this, but I'm glad that you did it and that this resource does exist. Are there thoughts about maybe 5-10 years from now updating the book or doing a new edition?
Oh yeah, so definitely that's definitely on my mind because some of the benefits have changed, some of the things have changed. But what is funny about the book and what makes me unique, because there were some books out there, but what makes my situation so unique is like I actually saw how the benefits got administered and I had to learn about them. So there's some people who help their buddies fill out claims, and I think they're smart and clever people and they write books about that. But it was very much, hey, this was my experience and I've helped a lot of people. This was my experience, but it wasn't as broad as what I saw. So that's kind of what I thought was unique, and said it wasn't that I'm so much smarter. I just sort of saw all the problems and I saw what the answers was supposed to be. So I really wanted to kind of paint, a good landscape of what was available out there.
Yeah. And Molly, my friend, Molly Rhiannon, she's on the call today. And I know that their family has definitely benefited from a lot of these benefits. And I'll read it out loud as well. I feel so blessed that my husband, Gabe, has VA benefits from being in the Marine Corps, and for our family, it's been such a blessing. As far as TAPS classes go, service members may have found great stuff from it, but I would say this: the best info for learning about benefits is always word of mouth from fellow veterans. My husband, Gabe, has benefited from being in connection with fellow brothers from the Marine Corps and learning about resources this way. And then I didn't get the rest of your comment, but yes, that sometimes is the way that people find out, is through word of mouth. But like you said, there's nothing better than getting it from the source. So definitely would highly recommend people check out this book. They can get it on Amazon. They can get it wherever you get books. I believe this book is available. Where else can people, if they want to know more information and they want to find you on LinkedIn, or they want to watch your podcast, how can they find you?
Well, I'm available on LinkedIn. It's my name, Paul R. Lawrence, and that's where I do all my social media. That's pretty much there. You can see what I'm producing and what I'm putting up in terms of information. It's all right there in my profile. But I guess I would like to go back to what Molly said, okay? I'm really glad she has benefits, and I'm really glad she figured out the value to her family of those. I have found that word of mouth often leads to just urban legend. Okay. So I would encourage folks to talk about benefits, but I would make sure you don't always believe everything everybody says, because basically what I got a lot of when I was in office is my buddies told me I wasn't a veteran and I wasn't eligible. It was the not. No, I heard I wasn't eligible, so I didn't go and investigate it. So I'm glad Molly's experience was really, really good. But I'd encourage other people, whether it's my book, whether it's just a website, whether it's whatever, look around. Don't be discouraged. So many people didn't get benefits, as you pointed out, Teresa, that they should. And so, be encouraged by your buddies. Don't be discouraged.
Awesome. Well, I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I feel like I've learned a lot just in some of the things that we've discussed. But is there anything else that you think would be of interest to our audience that we didn't cover down on that you would like to touch upon a little more?
Sure. One quick thing here. Veterans homelessness is really something that I think we got to work on. And so you think, well, what can I possibly do? And I know there's nothing more frustrated. I don't probably think this exists for you in London the same way I'm going to describe it here in the United States. But, you come to a light and you see a homeless veteran, you think with a sign that says homeless veteran, please help, or something like that. And you're just dying to do something, but you wonder, what can I do? VA has a homeless hotline. you can actually call this number and they will send somebody to figure out if that person is a veteran and how to get them help. So if you could share this number, this is a United States number, of course, eight
Mhm.
seven seven 424 3838. Again, it's the VA homeless hotline, 877 424 3838. If you see somebody like that, you think they're a veteran, or you know somebody on the cusp of homelessness, like, let's find those people, because there's lots of resources. We just got to connect these folks to the VA so that we can eliminate homelessness.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? When we do these clips, I'll make sure that we say something in there about that, and I'll also add that to the show notes as well, because I think that veteran homelessness is such a I mean, anybody who's homeless is very tragic and unfortunate. And in fact, I have a friend, her name is Stacy Redinger, and she's out in San Diego, and they're trying to come up with different ways to curb the homeless problem in California, as we know, is very, very, very dire there. And there's a lot of initiatives to try to build like a trailer park or some of the smaller trailer homes for some sort of sort of a supportive housing environment. And I do believe that we as an Americans, we do need to get a handle on that issue. Ridge Edwards says, "I'm glad there's a book." He says, "I'll have to pick it up even though I'm already through with claims. I was in a bad situation where I was working in a remote place, not on a post, so I didn't have help. Trying to navigate the process while in pain, heavily medicated, and without support was not fun." And yeah, that's sometimes.
Okay, but here's my advice for Ridge. Get the book, because in the book we'll talk about getting you help from a veteran service organization. Whatever your claim is, it probably didn't end up being exactly what they wish they got. It's okay to go back again, and having some help this time can make it better and maybe get you exactly what is appropriate for your situation. So I wouldn't declare victory after just one time.
Right, right. That is true, and definitely, I spoke to another person who worked with the Veterans Affairs, and she worked with the appeals. She was one of the elected officials. I want to say elected with the appeals process, and she was telling me that many people, they just take what their first rating is, even if they thought they deserved more or they should get more, and they don't appeal the process. And there's it's definitely worth it if you do feel that it wasn't the proper rating to go through that process and do those appeals. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And I'm sure what she explained to you is what's really unique about the VA is any decision VA makes on your behalf, you can appeal. It's true for medical care. It's true for
Mm,
just about anything. It's like, I think this is the one special thing about the VA that doesn't exist anywhere. I mean, I tried this at the IRS. They don't give you any chance to appeal your, okay. But VA, you can appeal. You can get a second. You can just kind of keep after it until you think you've been treated fairly based on what you want. So yes, look at the appeals process. It's gotten a lot better since 2019. Used to take years and years. Now there's some ways you can do it in a couple of months. So look at that. Yes, don't let people be discouraged and shouted down when they think that's not what they were entitled to.
yep. All right. Well, I really appreciate you taking the opportunity to come on our show and talking a little bit about this issue. I believe that so many of us need this information, and we need to lean on one another to, like you say, ask the questions, but then verify with the resources and with the people like yourself who know, who've been there, who've written the book, and who can provide more information on these programs.
Hey, thank you so much, Trisha. Really enjoyed our time together.
I really did as well. I'm going to go full screen, but I'll meet you backstage to say goodbye, and I'll just close out the call real quick. So thank
Okay.
you again. All right, guys. I really appreciate your time tonight. I know we had 2 podcasts this week, but trying to cram them all in and work on a move at the same time. But I will be back at this next week. And as I always say to close out these calls, take care of yourself, take care of each other. Hope you enjoyed the show tonight, learned a little something, and have a wonderful rest of your evening. Bye bye now.